Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching this live stream from. Welcome to yet another weekly broadcast on Hinduism. My name is Nishit Kotrak. I'm here with the team from Hindu Academy. If you are new to the broadcast, then welcome. Let me just explain to you how this broadcast works. We run for about 50 to 55 minutes every Saturday, 2 o'clock UK time to roughly about 3 p.m. And we start with a focused topic video, and we have a little discussion around it. Then after that, we will go into Q&A session, where we will answer the questions that you, the viewers, can post for us in the comments area on YouTube or Facebook at youtube.com/Hindu Academy or facebook.com/Hindu Academy. So last week, we were talking about Swami Vivekananda and celebrating 159 years of his birth. And this week, we are carrying on with that same thread because it's not enough time to cover this wonderful personality, a modern spiritual giant of recent times who has shared so much wisdom and helped us to connect with Hinduism in a modern context very, very well. What I'd like to do is first get started with the video of the day, which is Vivekananda's message, and then we will talk about the video and the information therein very shortly thereafter. Let me just share this video.
We have heard about the grand message of Vivekananda. But the question is the world ready for it? Because even 100 years ago when he gave these lectures and speeches in America, you don't see the whole of America becoming following Vivekananda's teachings, because I think he was a very strong Christianness at that time. And although he may have made an impact on the intellectual group, on the society in general, you still wonder that, are we ready for his message? No matter how grand it is, can you elaborate more on that point?
Here stands a powerful message. So clearly visible, so clearly expressed, so well articulated. And yet, why doesn't the world react? You see, the world has got its own kind of momentum, its own inertia. Even though, in many cases, in most cases, in fact, sometimes, we discover, say, in the life of Krishna or even in the time of Ram, during their own lifetime, very few people recognize their validity and the power of what they came with. It took many years before what they stood for became more viable or more kind of visible in society. And once it becomes, if you like, enshrined in society, it makes dramatic changes in society. The same is to only personality where we find that during his own lifetime the world was changed was Buddha. In the life of Buddha, in 80 years of his life, he dramatically transformed the whole of the Indian subcontinent and sent his message to the Southeast Asia. In time of Christ, he had struggled. Only a handful of people understood him. And for a few hundred years, it was just, in the backwaters. Just after a few hundred, suddenly, what he was talking about seemed to click well with society, and it kind of gelled very well. The same is true, in my opinion, about Swami Vivekananda. He was ahead of his time in that sense, that he has left a message very relevant. And I just gave an example, 9/11, 1893, and then now. So you see it becoming visible now, or the importance is becoming visible now. This happens in the cases of many of these grand super personalities. Let me say one other very cutting comment. I need to pass this back to India. You see, sometimes people say, we love our ancient prophets, these rishis we had, who lived in golden age with beard, sitting under the tree and meditating. We love them. And Vivekananda, modern fangled saintly, patriot saint and all this, fiery chap, nice chap, but not the same level, not at the same level, not the same caliber. My challenge to modern India is this. Why should my Vivekananda measure up to your ancient prophets? If your ancient prophets do not measure up to my Vivekananda, who talks in contemporary language for the modern times, time to discard them. Their sell-by date is gone. Why should he measure up to you? Your prophets have to measure up to him, otherwise their sell-by date is gone. It's a very sharp comment to pass. People shudder. They say, oh no, you can't say stuff like that. You can't equate him to that. I say, why not? Show me anything in this personality that in any way lacks what the ancient personalities taught us. It doesn't say anything different. The reason why it's more relevant is because he talks in our times, in our language, using the metaphor and the language more suited to our own times. Don't you see the power of that? Suppose I look at the ancient, no, I look at the Brahma Sutras, I get a headache. They're aphorism, not even sentences, phrases, and you can interpret them as you like. They were deliberately meant to be that because they were trying to express poetically things which are difficult to express. They were trying to express spiritual experience in the least number of words, with the least number of words. But they give me a headache. I can't interpret it because they were suited to that particular time. With Vivekananda, the pleasure, the good thing is, he talks in our times, in our own language. You can't fault the rascal. You can't fault him. I love him. I can talk like that. You can't fault him. He talks in our language, in our times, using the metaphors and the stories that will immediately grab hold of us. That is why I say it is time for India to grow up, recognize a modern prophet who talks in their own times, things which are relevant in our own times. Very important distinction.
So there we go. That was a really interesting video talking about Swami Vivekananda's message to the world and whether he was ahead of his time. And to help us discuss this, I've got the panel here, led ably by Manish Bhai. First of all, let me just introduce everybody. We got Manish Bhai, Sita Ben, Vijay Bhai, and Manish Bhai, over to you now.
Thank you, Vijay Bhai. Welcome viewers to today's live Q&A session on Swami Vivekananda as our special topic, part 2 from carrying on from last week. And we saw on 12th January, it was Swami Vivekananda's 159th birthday. And we saw, YouTube is full of Swami Vivekananda videos, and Jai Bhai has done many videos, and we got a nice playlist you can check out. But carrying on from what Jai Bhai said in this video, very strong words. Hindus, you now need to focus on Swami Vivekananda. And even after 160 years of Swami Vivekananda, we see as a general Hindu public, not much difference, not much changed. And what do you make of it, Sita Ben? How is this going to progress? Why is his message not cutting across, getting across to Hindus?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a number of reasons. One of the reasons is that it's very, very difficult to change mindsets. We always seem to think that old is gold. And yes, that's true to a certain extent, but Hinduism is an extremely fluid religion, which makes it very unique because it's not stuck on ancient scriptures and ancient rishis and what they've said, because it's actually possible to still have spiritual experiences today. I think there's this idea that, spiritual experiences are only restricted to people who lived thousands of years ago, who, rishis, as Dad said, with long beards sitting under a tree, and you think that's the only people who can get it. But in fact, it's something that it's very contemporary. It's something that can alleviate so much sort of mental suffering that's going on in the world today. And the fact that we've got individuals like Swami Vivekananda who can have these amazing spiritual experiences and express them in our language, in modern language, is just absolutely a treasure trove. And we should not sort of underestimate how beautiful and wonderful it is and how life transforming it is. And, as we say, we have to find our own journey. We have to reach that point of enlightenment for ourselves. And guidance from amazing teachers like Swami Vivekananda is vital, because without that, we are completely lost. A lot of the ancient scriptures have, as Dad was saying in the video, very, very short Sanskrit aphorisms, which kind of create a whole jargon of different kinds of interpretations. I think, from the same sort of Vedas, you get Dvait Vedant, Advait Vedant, you get Vishishtadvait, you get so many different variations because the Sanskrit literature was extremely compact, and it's a very, very sort of, you have to try and figure it out. Whereas, look, you don't need to figure this out. This is Swami Vivekananda talking in English, and it's the most beautiful, wonderful treasure trove that we have to remember, that we can't just stay stuck in ancient times like a lot of other religions are. We have the freedom to move forward, and we need to sort of change our mindset. But it takes a long time for mindsets to change. A lot of people are not appreciated in their own time. It's only after they've gone, 100 years after they've gone, we think, really, wow, this is ours. And it's time to really understand the beauty and the spiritual depth of it. Vijay, are you back? Are you able to? Oh, okay. Yeah, right. Yeah. Manage back.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sita Ben, for that wonderful answer. Staying with the same thing, Jaibai was clearly saying, maybe it's time to discard the old Sanskrit and move on with a new one. Is the time right? And Swami Vivekananda's approach of using rationality to approach spirituality, is this a modern way to go when everything is challenged? How do we progress forward, Sita Ben?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, what Swami Vivekananda says is very much in line with sort of the modern findings of science, as Dad has discussed many times in his videos. Some of the wonderful things that you find at the heart of quantum mechanics. What is the heart of consciousness? How do you describe what consciousness is? These different fields of science are really sort of coming to loggerheads. They're sort of hitting their heads against a brick wall, against a material wall, if you like, because in order to make that leap of understanding of what these things are, what is quantum, what is consciousness, you have to sort of take a step away from the sort of materialistic aspect of science. And actually what these ancient rishis were talking about does provide an explanation as to what this all is, because we talk about the whole universe being essentially non-material in ancient scriptures, but then you have people like Swami Vivekananda who are able to sort of express these wonderful ideas. He came across wonderful people like Nikola Tesla, for example. He met so many wonderful people who were sort of exploring science, who are exploring how to make sense of the world through a materialistic scientific worldview. And it's a shame, unfortunately, he just sort of missed the point where quantum was being discovered. But if he had come across, the sort of the three fathers of quantum mechanics and Einstein and all of that, I don't know what, the world may be a different place. I just wish that they had had a chance to meet, because the incredible synergy is mind-blowing, because you always think of science as being the complete polar opposite of spirituality, whereas really science is really at a standstill, and the only way that it can move is through a spiritual insight into the nature of reality. I don't know if Vijay Bhai is back and if he's able to come in on anything. Yes.
Sorry, I'm back now, but I didn't get the question. Sorry.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, it was just talking about the relevance of Swami Vivekananda and his teachings compared to the sort of ancient teachings of the rishis, and how relevant and important it is today.
Yeah, I think that's very important. I think Vivekananda's teachings have actually seen basically the ancient ideas of Hinduism, the core ideas of Hinduism in the modern context. And that is actually brilliant, because if you look at the ancient Brahmanic traditions, which are quite often based on rituals, fire worship, but now in the modern world, the same message of divinity. And I think if you look at the ancient rishis, they would actually use, nature like fire worship to kind of show the evidence of divinity. But the world has now changed. So in many ways, the way we see things is totally different. So I think Vivekananda's message in that sense is very, very important. Also in the modern world, where we have the challenge from science. And if you look at Vivekananda's lectures in America, they're actually trying to synergize both the ideas of ancient Hinduism and science. So in that sense, I think it seems much more relevant today. And regarding, I think, even I would say that I think we are lucky in that sense, because when Vivekananda came up 100 years ago, or maybe now more than that, quite a few years ago, 125, 30 years ago, the thing is that his message will come pretty soon. I mean, if you look at some other message, other religions took 500 years, 600 years to come forward. But the message of Vivekananda, I think in the next 50 years, it'll really flower. So we're at the right time to see his message come through. Very lucky in that sense. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Vijay Bhai. So, one message that come across from Swami Vivekananda is making the religion or spirituality practical. And that's where his message of spiritual humanism comes to the fore, where earlier traditions, I think the Hinduism went in a bhakti mode in the previous few hundred years, where all was like bhakti. And here comes Vivekananda talking about seeing divinity in humanity and spiritual humanism. Is this a modern way? And should Hindus be changing approach now?
Yeah, I think the good thing is this, at Bhakti, I think from the start of, Ramanuja, I think about 800 AD, the Bhakti mark really started growing, because initially we had the Shankaracharya when, the message of Advaita was quite powerful, but the Shankaracharya also had a challenge from the Buddhists. So that was a good step. But I think that was still very difficult for many people to grasp, the idea of Advaita tradition. So even Shankaracharya could see that. That's why also he supported, building of temples. He established idols. So he realized the message of Advaita will not be picked up at that point. And I think depending on the time you live in, so since Ramanuja till very early recently, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Vallabhacharya, the idea of Bhakti Marg has always been there. But now the world is now changed, because the modern youth with a lot of science, understanding of science, deep knowledge of, the other kinds of knowledge, they want to see the idea of spirituality differently. So for them, sitting in a temple just doing bhakti, it's not enough. Mind you, having said that, I love the idea of bhajans and bhakti. I don't mind sitting. But for modern youth, it's a challenge sometimes. For them to see divinity in others, the divinity has to be universal in everything. That's why I've talked to a lot of, religious people from other religions like Christianity, and they have the same issue. They go, how can only our path be true? The message should be true for everybody. Yeah, it can't be kind of, a narrow path. And this is a challenge that all religions are facing. How do you make a message universal and, in sense, more spiritual, and accept the divinity everywhere, not only humans, but also in nature? And this is where the challenge lies. And this is, I think, where Vivekananda's teaching will now come to the fore. I know I've talked to my children as well. They're quite comfortable with Vivekananda's message. But if you ask them to believe in ancient gods, they struggle. I'm telling you honestly, they struggle to believe in ancient gods. We say, believe in Rama. He goes, okay, Rama was a great personality. Yeah, but that cannot be the only way to express spirituality. So just sitting somewhere and doing bhajans is good for you. I'm not saying it's not. It's good for you. Also, bhakti is one of the pathways to moksha. But for the modern world, the message of spiritual humanism and seeing God in, humanity and divinity everywhere, that's kind of the key driver for the modern youth. So I think the message is now the right time for this message to really flower. Sita Ben?
I think you're completely right. I think especially, people who are sort of growing up nowadays, the next generation, they really don't relate to the idea of a God, because they're always taught to question things. And straight away the question comes when there is a personal God in the heaven, like, why is there suffering? Why is there pain? Why is the world like this? Why do we go through so many different kinds of physical, mental suffering? And then the animal kingdom is going through so much suffering. And it doesn't make any sense to have an all-compassionate and all-powerful God who does not answer these questions. The God doesn't seem compassionate or powerful in that case. So in fact, seeing that actually, hang on, the God isn't sitting up there in the cloud, he's sitting inside you. And it's up to you to find a solution to the struggles that are going on in the world. It's up to you to, if everything sort of pushes you in a corner, it's not God's fault. It's up to you to try and come out of that and make yourself strong. So ultimately, it's an extremely empowering, method, and it's extremely relevant for the world today. I think that's why it's often referred to as the roaring lion of Advaita, because it's so empowering, and it gets rid of all of the garbage, all of the rubbish, the questions and the sort of doubts that young people have about God. Because when you say, why did God do this? We'll say, look, you are God. You are seeing the problem in front of you. Do something about it. And that's the best way that we can lead our lives. And hopefully we can make spiritual progress and realize truly that we are actually God.
Wonderful answer, Sita Ben. So wonderful. So staying with the spiritual humanism theme, Vishal R is asking, how can I know more about spiritual humanism? I'll add a little bit more to it, because many Hindus do not relate to this idea that you can see, divinity and humanity, and you can serve humanity to and reach moksha that way. Is there any scriptural basis to this? What Vivekananda is saying, Sita Ben?
Yes, of course. I mean, this is what the ancient scriptures have been talking about, this nature of reality, the nature of everything, the underpinning to the universe is essentially Brahman. And this is manifested also as, through all living things as Atman. And this is what the ancient scriptures have been talking about. And the Mahavakyas talk about Atman equals Brahman, essentially, that everything, all living things, everything in the universe is percolating with spirit. And essentially, that's what Swami Vivekananda is bringing in a modern light, because all of these ancient scriptures are otherwise sitting in dusty libraries and nobody's really paying much attention to it. They don't relate to modern life. But having the teachings of Swami Vivekananda in a very practical way, he can show us how to live our lives in a way that is so empowering, saying that you are in charge of your destiny, you are in charge of everything around you. You see a problem, sort it out, don't blame a god. It's you are God, so try and sort it out. And that's essentially what Swami Vivekananda's message is bringing these ancient dusty scriptures into a modern context. And even more so, the next step, I feel like there is a next step, and it's just sort of on the cusp, I feel, is, humanity is obsessed with the idea of science and materialism, and it's all very advanced. It's changed our lives. The fact that we can just have conversations like this over our mobile phones is amazing. But there's a limit to it. It doesn't provide that ultimate sort of answer that we're all looking for in our lives. So having that connection between science and the ancient scriptures, the spirit, science and spirit, is essentially they need to come together, and they can create such a beautiful way of looking at our lives. So hopefully there will be sort of giants in the future, spiritual giants in the future, who can sort of create that link and create a better world, essentially. Vijay Bhai?
I think you got it right, Sita, because it's very true. If you look at the Upanishads, which are the scriptures of authority, they talk about the idea of, everything being divine through the Atman and Brahman manifesting the Atman. The thing is, but that message is kind of so hidden away, as Sita mentioned, is I think partly because India has been absorbing so many different external cultures as well. So Vivekananda's message was very refreshing, because for the first time, the ancient ideas that we have, the idea of, divinity in everything, came to the fore in a modern light. And I mean, you can just look at his lectures. I mean, you don't have to buy the 9 volumes, but if you just Google it, you can see all these messages he has. They're saying the same message, the idea of seeing the divinity in man. I mean, that's the reason, one of the main reasons why he started this Ramakrishna mission, to serve humanity. See, Ramakrishna mission don't build temples. They build, schools and charity houses. That primary goal, to serve the living God. And I think this is something that it's not a new idea to Hinduism. Actually, it's a very ancient idea, but it's now been brought to the fore. And that's a beautiful thing. I think something else Sita mentioned as well, despite all the modern sciences we have, all the new technology gadgets, we still have a lot of issues regarding mental health problems. People have stress, all this stuff. So even now, more than anything, this message is very important, to serve fellow human beings and give everybody strength, collective strength, to succeed in life, in spirituality, in every kind of sense. So Vivekananda's message of serving humanity, seeing the God in humans is very, very important today. So yeah, really, I think we're getting there. Manish Bhai.
Thank you, Vijay Bhai. So Vishal, Jay Bhai has done many videos on spiritual humanism. If you search YouTube, our Hindu Academy. So if you search YouTube, put Hindu Academy first, and then next word is spiritual humanism. You will find Jay Bhai's video on it, and he has talked about it in more detail there. Also, there are stories in some of our scriptures, like Mahabharata. There is a story of now my mind's gone blank. Story, the Vyad Gita is in a way is showing the karma yoga serving humanity. And there are other stories like that. And this is, visible in our scriptures. And Upanishads, I'll read the 4 Mahavakyas. Pragnanam Brahman, which means Brahman is consciousness. This is from Aitareya Upanishad. Aham Brahmasmi from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. That means I am Brahman. Tattvamasi, that you are that. Chandogya Upanishad. And I am Atman Brahman, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad again. and that means this self, this Atman is Brahman. So we can see that it's all there in our scriptures. But again, many Hindus are very much like Puranas, and we live, as most of us love this, Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhagavad Purana is one of the book that many Hindus love. So we got a couple of questions on Puranas. Dattatreya Parija is asked, if Purana are legendary, and if God is a human ploy, whom did Ramakrishna have a vision of at the Dakshineswar Kali temple? Vijay Bhai. And the second question I will add in as well, David Wahlberg has asked, is Purana acceptable as Vedas? Vijay Bhai.
Oh, you're on mute, Vijay Bhai.
Yeah, regarding the story, thanks, Sita. The first question regarding Ramakrishna person's experience, the experience here of Kali. Remember one thing, that Ramakrishna is actually, in a way, a very good example on how to see God in everything, in any way, in any form you want to. Look, God is universal. If you want to bring it to finite form and worship it, that's actually absolutely fine. So Ramakrishna is so unique in that sense that for him, God can be seen in multiple ways and myriad forms. He can see God as Advait. He can bring the God Advait into Advait form and still worship it. And that's the beauty of Ramakrishna Paramahansa. Yeah? So in that sense, when you say, what was Ramakrishna saying? He was seeing the universal Brahman through, Kali. And that's what he's actually saying. So in that sense, Ramakrishna is very special. For us, that levels really can't compare. But that's the idea behind. That's why Hinduism accepts. Look, even in the smallest things, even if you see somebody, worshipping a small linga, if you see go through that, so be it. You may not see it immediately. At some point, he'll see, but Ramakrishna Paramahansa was seeing it every time, and that's very unique because even it reminds me of the example of Totapuri when he was, as a great Advaita practitioner of Advaita Vedanta, a very, very powerful person, and he's been practicing for so many years. Yet when he asked Ramakrishna Paramahansa to do it and he put him in a room, he didn't come out. And Totapuri was kind of freaked out. He goes, somebody just a click of a finger can go to, in deepest of meditation and see the idea of connection with Brahman. And he realized this person is unique because he can see God in anything, in any form, anywhere. That is just, mind blowing. So I think we have to compare in a different level because Ramakrishna was a different level from us. So the comparison should be very different. The other question on Puranas that Manish Bhai mentioned, look, I know that there are some Hindu traditions which say that the Puranas, Srimad Bhagavad Purana is actually the fifth Veda. There are some movements as well which take the Bhagavad Purana as even higher than the four Vedas. You'd be surprised. There are moments, I don't want to give names, but you can work it out. But the thing is, the ancient experience that rishis had, and that not only that, to this time, like, Raman Maharishi, Ramakrishna Paramahansa, Anand Mahima, Swami Vivekananda, it's been happening even today. And that's not unique. That's been the consistent kind of experience that Hindus have. As a matter of fact, not only Hindus, even in other traditions, religious traditions, there are great people who have had this kind of experiences in other traditions, other religions as well. And that has always been the case. So I think, by and large, I would say that most scholars in India accept the Upanishads or the Vedas as the authority. They don't accept the Puranas as authority because they don't cover the deeper philosophical ideas. But they're very, very good for Bhakti Marg, and it's very much fun to listen to because I've listened to when you hear the story, Sukadeva, it's so nice, it's so brilliant, really fun to listen to. But they are still seen as Smriti scriptures, not of authority like the Vedic scriptures, which are the true source of the knowledge of how we connect to the divine everywhere. So there's a distinction there in that sense. Yeah. But you've got a point that there's some movements who do accept the Puranas as Vedas, and sometimes even higher than the Vedas. But Hinduism is a democracy. If they feel that they have to progress spiritually, so be it. I'm not going to challenge that. Sita, Ben.
Yeah, no, I think you've covered it amazingly. I think because this idea of thinking of God with form is so sort of ingrained in the Hindu mindset, and there is a great deal of love for God with form, especially God as Krishna is probably one of the most popular ways of thinking about God with form. And this idea of Dvait Vedanta is extremely, everyone loves to sort of think of God as their child, as their friend, as you can with Krishna. And this is the thing, is sometimes the analogy is used, sometimes you don't want to sort of become sugar, you don't want to sort of merge with the absolute, you just want to taste the sugar, you just want to taste the sweetness of God, but you don't want to exactly merge into God at that point. So I think that's very much sort of ingrained in the sort of Hindu mindset. But having said that, it's changing dramatically now. I mean, younger generations of Hindus even are not able to relate so much as previous generations to these ideas of God with form. And that's why personalities like Sri Ramakrishna was able to say, look, he could demonstrate the vast plethora of different ways of experiencing God. He experienced God with form predominantly as the mother goddess. And I think that's also significant because I think now is the age of women. So having somebody in a modern time who is able to experience God as a female is really powerful. And in addition, thinking of God as Ram, as Krishna, but even he had vision of Jesus Christ. He experienced Advait Vedanta, and they couldn't get him out of that. He was in such deep meditation, they would struggle to get him out of meditation. So he's showing in his life that in a very practical way that you can experience God in such a variety of different ways. And it's up to you, because everyone's journey is individual, everyone's journey is different. And as Vijay Bhai said, it's a spiritual democracy. So choose the way that's best for you, but please don't impose your way on others, because it's like pushing water back up the mountain and making it start again. It's just completely wrong. So let everyone be, let everyone make spiritual progress in the best way for them.
Wonderful answer, Sita Ben. I'll just put my take on this question about Ramakrishna and viewing Kali. Sri Ramakrishna also said, Brahma and Sakti are not two different things; they are one and the same. And as Jai Bhai explains, that it's the same thing. Brahman appears as Kali, appears as other Vishnu or Shiva. It depends on the bhakta. The entity appears to your as your mindset is. So it depends on bhakta. So that is how I would explain it. Next question we take is the Sita Ben mention about Mother Goddess Kali, and Swami Vivekananda talked about spiritual humanism and Raj Yoga. And then he wrote a poem on Kali. What is your take on that, Sita Ben?
Well, actually, if we look at the story, of the wonderful relationship between Ramakrishna and Vivekananda, we've spoken about this story previously, where Vivekananda was, his family was in a very difficult financial position, and Vivekananda told Ramakrishna, "What am I going to do about this?" Because an impersonal God isn't really going to do very much about it. So he asked Ramakrishna, what can I do? And Ramakrishna said, go and ask my mummy. He always just said, go and ask me. And that means the mother goddess, obviously. And, Vivekananda went to the temple, and because Vivekananda was a very powerful spiritual giant in his own right, this kind of God vision comes much more easily than it does for us. And he went to the Kali temple, and instead of seeing an image of God like normal people like us would, he saw the real mother goddess Kali, and he was completely awestruck, and he just kept singing of the praises of the mother goddess Kali, and he would forget all about his worldly sort of concerns, and he'd walk away, and then he'd leave the temple and be like, oh, I forgot I was supposed to ask about getting some sort of financial security for my family. And he would go up and down, keep forgetting to ask the mother goddess, because in the face of that spiritual experience, these material needs, these material requirements feel completely, there's a waste of time, really. You don't have time to think about anything else. You are just in awe of the beauty of that image. So that's why Vivekananda wasn't able to go and ask for that material help, but he did somehow get it in the end. But it's just a beautiful way of showing that even though you can be immersed in Advait, this idea that everything is spirit, there is, a soft corner that Hindus have for, thinking of God with form. And that's why Vivekananda, I guess, wrote this beautiful poem about the mother goddess Kali, because thinking of God in a personal way is just so endearing. Thinking of God as a person that you can relate to is just, it's magical. And it's very different to this monism, this idea that everything is spirit. Yes, everything is spirit, but everything sort of relates, it relates in the same way. Your mom is still your mom, your dad is still your dad, everything is the same. But really, when you think of God as a mother or as a father, there's something very special there. Vijay Bhai?
I think that's an interesting question, Manish Bhai, because I mean, to be frank, the many things like in this world that can be seen different ways depending on your point of view or what you want to achieve. It kind of reminds me of, science. An atom can be seen as a particle or a wave. And depending on what problem you're trying to solve, we can use the different kind of outlook on because I know like Schrodinger, for some music, he used to say, okay, it's actually a wave. Einstein goes, no, it's a particle because of certain. Similarly, look, for Hindus, the idea of Advait is the idea of universal Brahman idea. Yet in the practical terms, sometimes it makes sense, Siddha says, to see in a form and interact with in a form, in a kind of finite form. And that's what's happening. And we all do that. I mean, I also worship God in a finite form. Although I understand the idea of Brahman, it makes more sense. Our mind is sometimes not geared to see that infinite form. So it makes sense to do it like that. Yeah, more than not to add on that, Manish Bhai. Yeah.
Wonderful answer, Vijay Bhai. We take next question from Honest Vertigo fan. He's asking, today's Hindus take many things for granted, just like many misconceptions about Varna system, mixing it with caste system that was introduced later. Soon be our approach be more scriptural? Should we focus more on scriptures and keep checking scriptures for chapter verse course to see how we should be proceeding? So should that be our approach, Vijay Bhai?
I think we have to be very careful in following scriptures blindly, because look, we have, apart from the Upanishads and the books which talk on philosophy, there's a lot of what do you call law books or books on code of conduct. I mean, there's Manusmriti, there's Yajnavalkya Smriti, there is, I think, Vithalnath Niti, Parasara Smriti. There are quite a few. For some reason, the West has always been also by only the Manusmriti. But the idea is this, that as time moves on, I would say that the collective law of the country would be perhaps the best way to follow the rules and regulations of the country in that sense. And that goes through a very, nowadays, most of these modern laws go through a very vigorous process through, information gathering, checking what's beneficial. And that's kind of the main way to go. But one other question that is mentioned here is the idea of Varna system and caste. Look, the caste word itself, it's very, very, it's not Indic, but sometimes words can be very powerful, and sometimes if they enter the system, it can cause tremendous damage. And partly because India has been conquered for a long time, we don't realize. Like recently, I watched a video. I don't know if Manish Bhai saw it, on the idea of the hooked cross. And the idea is people keep on saying swastika, swastika, Nazi swastika. They need a swastika. They actually use a hooked cross. If you read the main camp, it's actually a hooked cross is a Christian symbol. But what's the best way to get away from taking blame for Christianity causing all this, world wars and genocide, is to change the swastika, saying, what would have somebody in Germany bother about something in India? But by changing the word, because the word is very clear, it's hooked cross. But this is the thing, once the word goes in, people sometimes shift. Even the caste system, I'll give you an example. In the West, Carl Gustav Jung himself said that society in Europe, not a long time ago, maybe 150, 200 years ago, was divided into 4 stages. The nobles, the knights, the merchants, and the serfs. So it's not unique. And this is something they've just copied and said, okay, something similar in India. Look, the word varna means different. It actually means color or, system kind of. Yeah. So even somebody, when they ask me caste, I ask, what do you mean? Do you mean varna or jati? And they get confused because they don't understand. So it's a very, very complex system in India. And the main thing was, there was discrimination based on your job, on the status here in society. That is very true. Also, through years, sometimes some castes move up because they get well off. This has been happening for a long time, not only in India, around the world. It's very ironic that people say only in India, but If you go, recently I was in visiting the Middle East, even there they have this kind of groups. Some are seen as lower kind of people, some are seen as higher people. It's been the nature of humanity. But somehow to link that to, it's a world cultural thing, not Indian cultural thing, but somehow to take that and link it to Indian religion, that's a bit of a, nasty kind of a gameplay, yes. So it's been a cultural thing around the world, not in India. So there are some scriptures, no doubt, which actually talk about caste by birth in Hinduism. But Hinduism got so many vast scriptures because everybody can write scriptures. Nobody's going to stop you in the ancient days. Everybody's free. Hinduism is free like that. So you can't say just because somebody wrote it his own thoughts is now word for everybody. Hinduism, as I mentioned earlier, is not a religion of the book. It's an experiential religion, which is what me and Sita talk about all the time. Books are there as a guide, but ultimately you are the greatest book of all, yourself, not the book wrote for somebody else. So keep that in mind. The greatest book of all is yourself. You decide what is right and what actually makes sense and what is honest and what is more universal. That is up to us as divine beings. Sita Ben, sorry for going on. Sita Ben.
Yeah, no. I mean, you've covered it amazingly. There's not much more I can add. I mean, as you say, I mean, this idea of caste and sort of, differentiating people into different classes is not unique to the Indian subcontinent, and it's actually an atrocity. It's a human failing that we have this tendency to classify people and put them as higher or lower and discriminate against certain groups of people. And it's a real shame, as Vijay Bhai said, that it's pinned against Hinduism as one of the Hindu teachings, where it really is not endorsed at all in the scriptures of authority. And we have to keep rubbing it in for many, many years. We continue to rub it in. I hope that eventually the penny will drop and people will realize that this is just a universal human failing, which has unfortunately been pinned onto Hinduism and Hindu teachings. And just one last thing to add is, Hinduism is very open. It says that, a lot of the ancient law books, we understand that they are no longer relevant when, time moves on. These are very ancient law books like the Manusmriti. And if you look at them now, they're very atrocious and they don't make any sense to us in current society. So you just have to follow the law of the land that you're living in. And that's the best way to be dharmic, essentially.
Fabulous. So, folks, we are at almost 40 minutes into the broadcast for today. And I've got to say, what an amazing topic that we started off with, Swami Vivekananda, his message and his teachings, a true modern spiritual giant. And now we are into the Q&A sessions. But whilst I've got you, I think I will share some of our resources. Now, many of you, if you've been a regular, you will know that I have been shouting since, I think, November, that we want to get to 100,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. I'm very, very happy to say that we have now achieved this goal of ours. So you can see here, we are at 100,000 subscribers. And so goals are meant to be achieved, and then we now set new goals. So the next new goal is to get to 1 million subscribers. And you can see on our video views here, we are at 8.5 million views. So the next goal for that would be 10 million views. And that will only happen with you all supporting us. And so we've got, again, a reminder. We have our website, which is hindu-academy.com. Over here, we have various resources for you. The most important ones are the Hinduism ebooks. And then you can also enroll in our free Hinduism course from clicking here, which would basically bring you to this, our course page. Again, here we have a goal of getting to 10,000, and every week it keeps going up slowly. So please make sure that if you have not enrolled in this Basics of Hinduism course, please do so. I'll put the link in the chat area for everybody. It's free. And at the end, you will get a quiz with about 100 questions to test you on your newfound knowledge on Hinduism. So those are the few little things that I wanted to share with everybody. Manish Bhai, back to you.
Thank you, Nisit Bhai. Yes, so please do check out our website and YouTube channel. If you have any question on Hinduism, you can type in our YouTube channel. You can, if you search here anything before Hindu Academy, with the Hindu Academy in the search as a search phrase, you should be able to find our videos on that particular topic. And Jai Bhai has answered so many questions on Hinduism. We've got over 3,000 videos, so a vast amount of resource there. Please do make use of it. We take Rishabh Taneja, your question has been answered. Is caste system or Varna system scripture ordained? Is not. Manusmriti is not, no longer valid, relevant, and it's not a Smriti scripture even. So caste system, there is no scriptural basis to it. Next question we take from Curious Creature. He's asking, could you explain the idea of Vedic gods? Are they just characters from Vedic stories, or do they represent humanoid forms of physical things like river Ganga? Vijay bhai, you're mute, sorry.
Thank you, Manish bhai. Yeah, it's a very interesting. This is the uniqueness of Hinduism. Actually, it's a very beautiful thing that we have. And look, the earliest belief of man, forget Hinduism for the moment, take any humanity, talking about thousands of years ago in the whole world. The idea is that the nature used to be kind of give them awe in one sense. When you see the rain, thunder, fire, give them so much awe, And even the earliest shamanist beliefs who uses nature kind of events to kind of do their, go in a trance and do all this kind of ancient worship to try and link to the forces, so they have a better, control over them, worship them, so that they bring, some shower blessings on them. So the earliest beliefs of man, which is basically personifying natural forces, yes, and which is what happened in the Rig Veda. So when we say, in a way, it's not a bad thing, because look, as we said, divinity can be seen everywhere, in fire, water. As a matter of water is, like divine, because without water we wouldn't survive. So water is even in some sense higher than us in that sense, right? No water, no life, so we wouldn't be here. So the Rig Veda captures this very beautifully in the early Samhita part. So the Rig Veda is divided into four major sections. We have the earliest part is Samhita, or some people just Samhita. And then you have the Brahmana rituals. Then you have the Aranyaks, early, philosophical texts, and the Upanishads. So the earliest beliefs in the Rig Veda is actually the beliefs on, personifying forces. As a matter of fact, the first verse is Agni Mite Purohita, I bow to Agni in the Rig Veda. So yes, we actually personify and give them divine status, which is a good thing, because think about it. If you show divinity something, you're more bound to look after it, because it's something divine. And it's a very, very unique, Hindu concept. And that's the beauty about the Rig Veda. The Rig Veda covers almost all the beliefs of humanity you've ever seen since dawn of humanity. They cover in the Rig Veda, at least some way or the other. So Rig Veda, in a sense, is universal. It's a collection of all the beliefs, collective beliefs of humanity. And that's why I love the Rig Veda, not necessarily because the only Hindu is very universal. And that's the beauty. So yes, we personify, and I think it's a good thing. And I think everybody should personify force of nature and revere them. Sita, man?
Yeah, no, I think you covered it amazingly. So, I mean, because as you were saying, ancient man was trying to sort of make sense of the world around them. And the way that they could do that was by sort of categorizing the different forces around them, like thunder, lightning, water, fire. And then, saying, I want my, for example, I need rain. So then they pray to the rain god and they get the rain. So, it's that kind of idea. And actually, it's something which resonates across, a number of different civilizations. For example, Greek mythology, sort of Norse mythology, they have these similar kind of ideas of personifying and deifying nature and natural forces, which is wonderful. And actually, I mean, it's kind of considered a bit outdated these days, but I think there is a real beauty in it, and it can really be brought back to the fore, especially with this new drive that we have for environmentally friendly, approaches. Because as Vijay was saying, if we sort of deify and divinify the forces of nature, fire, earth, air, water, wind, it really kind of makes everything feel more divine, and it gives us a great deal of reverence for these natural forces. And I think maybe one of the sort of remnants which carries on today of this sort of ancient idea is, we like to think of, we always do a havan when we do a special ceremony. We're kind of paying reverence to fire, because fire is the eternal witness to what we are performing, the wedding or whatever it is. So I think that's probably a remnant from this wonderful idea, but it's considered to be ancient and old-fashioned, but I think there's a real place for it in the new environmental drive.
Wonderful answer, Sita Ben. There are follow-up questions regarding that caste system answer. So, Honest Vertigo fan is saying, according to Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, verse 15, Varna is based on quality and actions, not on birth. So they're going back to Gita and try to bring the Varna system. And he's saying not books like Manusmriti. So now we're coming to the Smriti scriptures and Varna system. And Rishabh Taneja is saying, follow up the question, if Varna system immediately assigned after birth, why at all Varna or caste should be assigned whenever? So this question remains, do we stick to, the main question is, okay, Varna system, the original idea of dividing people as per their, aptitude and skills is, that was the main idea behind. Do we stick to that? And do we say, okay, now let's assign people by their, their skills and their aptitudes, or is this happening naturally now that people are choosing their own jobs? And do we need such a system, or need to bring back such a system? Sita Ben?
Yeah, I mean, as the Bhagavad Gita says, it says that someone who is a Brahmin has got a range of qualities which sort of mean that they are suited to be a Brahmin or a teacher. And then it talks about a list of qualities for someone who is a Kshatriya, a warrior. So yes, that makes complete sense, because, you have to have those qualities within yourself to do well in that particular field. So, if you're naturally very sort of academic and wanting to learn about enlightenment and spirituality, then you're suited to be a Brahmin, but not your son, who is born into a Brahmin family. But that doesn't mean that he's automatically a Brahmin. He may be better suited as a Kshatriya, as a warrior. How do you know? It's very, very unfortunate that this whole system has sort of descended into a hereditary and hierarchical system, because essentially what modern society does, and what society has been doing for thousands of years actually, is sort of dividing people up based on their aptitude, what they are good at, and sort of funneling them into the right profession, which means that they can really flourish in that particular profession. If you're very academic, then you go into a teaching profession, for example, or suppose you're very caring by nature, you want to become a carer, then that's your profession, do well in it. So that's what society does. It tries to maximize the best sort of benefit for the whole community, and that's essentially what the Bhagavad Gita is talking about, and there's nothing wrong with that. The big problem, as we have said many, many times, is when it becomes hereditary and hierarchical, because it's a great detriment to the whole community and the whole society. Vijay Bhai? Oh, you're on mute. Yes,
To add to that, what Sita Ben just said, is that not only the fact that it's hierarchical is also discriminatory, and that's really bad, because you can see that in India, that because I'm in a certain caste or certain varna, that means I'm superior. And I think what Sita mentioned, the key message I would say, adding on to Sita, follow your natural talents, aptitude, and that's what kind of decides what you're going to be. But as Gita mentioned very often, do your dharma and duty. Do it honestly, whatever you're doing, and with within your dharma. Otherwise, if you just do some, I know like many doctors you see in India, they're doctors, but they how to get money out of people, with all kinds of dochi, then you're not following your dharma. So you may be doctor in name, and that may be your aptitude and talent, but you're not following that. So Gita does two things. It actually says follow your talents, follow your natural strengths you have, at the same time stay within dharma and do it properly. So make sure, that's the other thing to make sure that we do. Manish bhai.
Wonderful answer, Sita Ben, Vijay bhai. We take a next question. It's probably last question for today. Drew Patel is asking, what is the cause of conflict between religions and how do we resolve it? And even in Hinduism, why are some sects disregarded? Vijay bhai?
Okay, there's a couple of things, right? So the reason why it happens that we have strife in the name of religion is primarily because we don't accept other people's way of spiritual progress. That has been a key problem. I just today finished reading a book by Catherine Nixie, based on the Darkening Age, which talks about the how the Christian world demolished the ancient Greek beliefs. And it is very, very brutal. And the key theme comes across: my way is right and your way is for the eternal damnation. That's the key message, comes up over and over again. So I think in Hinduism, we are lucky like that, in the sense that we accept that everybody can make people from the own point of position, or in the own age and absolute society they come from, where they're born. So everybody is progressing spiritually in their own way. If you can accept that key idea, then I think you're on safe ground. Because somebody just asked a question, is how ancient is Hinduism? Hinduism is the oldest dawn of humanity. So at that time, people didn't understand the idea of Atman Brahman. So they would worship, forces personified. Even today, there are some ancient tribes who do that. And that's so be it. That's good. Because Hinduism is not just one life. We progress through many lives. So everybody has their own starting points, and everybody can worship God in whatever they want. True that this may sometimes cause some really awkward, weird, strange, extreme cults. That's the price sometimes you pay for spiritual democracy. And we have this in India. But by and large, I think we can't really say that somebody's path is bad or not nice. Because, you also in India, people like Aghori Babas who live in, crematoriums, yeah. That's very strange and unique, but I would never go after them because, hey, look, it's as strange as it sounds to me, weird. Let them do it. They think that by being on dead bodies, it makes you realize that the uselessness of your body is no value. That's what they use. So be it, I think that's one thing. That's why one thing we have to keep in mind, because when you are following a faith which is very exclusive, you tend to say that you love humanity, you tolerate them, but actually are you? Because to me, it's an insult saying that, oh, I have to come, you must do this, otherwise, yours is not right. It's like telling me my mother is wrong, your mother is right. See, that classic story Jeb always talks about, with two boys. That's very, very insulting. I tell them sometimes when some people come and knock on my doors and they get taken aback, we're giving the true message. How can you say insulting? But it is, because you're saying that my beliefs and what I've grown up is wrong. And I think we have to be so Hinduism is a very big role to play here, to teach people not just to tolerate, but to respect there's a wide range of beliefs and everybody's got their own starting points. And that's the beauty we have. And I think we should really sell this. I won't say hard sell it, but at least sell that point. Sita Ben?
Yeah, no, I think you've covered it amazingly. I mean, as we say, the reason why there is a great deal of strife in the name of religion is because everyone is sort of claiming an exclusivist agenda, saying only my way is right. And as Vijay was saying, Dad has told so many times the story of two boys in the playground, and it just shows that really there is such a great need, because Hinduism has got a lot to offer on the world stage, because Hinduism says there is not just one way, there are many, many ways. They are equally valid. So that's the wonderful beauty of it, and especially with Sri Ramakrishna, because before he came along, there was no sort of reconciliation between different pathways, but on an experiential level, he was able to prove the validity of so many different spiritual approaches. And that's really what the world needs. And, I hope that his message gets out there and people are able to understand and appreciate spiritual democracy.
Wonderful. So we are almost at the top of the hour now. Time to bring this broadcast to an end. I must say thank you to Manish Bhai, Sita Ben, Vijay Bhai for so very ably answering the questions that people have been, sharing with us on YouTube and Facebook. To recap, today we spent time on week number 2 discussing Swami Vivekananda, the modern spiritual giant, celebrating his life and his works and his ideas that have helped so many hundreds of thousands of people embrace Hinduism in a modern context, sort of the revival of modern Hinduism. We then launched into a variety of questions from the viewers. And I must say today, we've had a very mature, healthy, and robust discussion within the comment section on YouTube, I would say. And I have to just give credit to everybody for, expressing their opinions very freely, but also not being very nasty. So keep it up. This is an open forum for you to come and, air your views. We don't say this is the only way. There are multiple pathways for everybody to embrace. And this is the beauty of Hinduism. I think we accept various ways. Somebody asked about scriptures, and I told him, what about people who are atheists or people who don't believe in the sort of personality-based version of the God? Then do the scriptures not apply and they're excluded. So, there are various things. This is the beauty of the discussions that we have on the channel. So with this, I'd like to bring this to a close. Before I do that, let me just share a quote of the day with you all. The quote for today is from Swami Vivekananda, and it reads that all power is within you. You can do anything and everything. So I hope that you all had a wonderful start to 2022. And we look forward to seeing you next week, 2 o'clock UK time, as usual. And thanks again to my team on the screen. Bye-bye for now.